And we're back. Welcome to the Pitwall, your stop for fantasy Formula One content. It has been way too long. I'm J-Jack, and let's go. We're going to break this video up into 3 parts. New connections, new rules, and new prices. You can like and subscribe for more content like this. Start off with new connections. Here's what's staying. This YouTube channel with the video analysis, the how-to videos, the Pitwall podcast, but now I'm going to be adding Pitwall Live. So stay tuned for that. We're going to be breaking up the podcast for fantasy talk and the race reactions into live because I found it a lot easier to be able to have the group talk off emotions when it's fresh than waiting a day and be like, how did I feel yesterday? How am I going to say that? And I'm here editing for hours, all those ums and so's. I am still going to be active on Twitter, link in the description below, and Reddit. I love being able to interact with those people in those communities through YouTube, Twitter, and Reddit. What's new for this season? New spreadsheet for 2022, link in the description below. We'll be launching a new Discord. Stay tuned for that. And launching a new Patreon. Also stay tuned for that because if you want to be able to help support and be able to afford some of the upgrades and things that I'm looking forward to do in this next year, I would appreciate for you to be a part of the Pit crew. And now for the new rules. Let's start off with the things that are staying the same. You still have a budget of 100 million. You select 5 drivers and 1 constructor. You can make up to 3 teams this way. Turbo driver, if they cost less than 20 million, they will get you double points and you can change that freely in between races. Your mega driver, you're able to use it twice per season, once before the summer break and once after the summer break, and that will give 1 driver, regardless of their cost, 3 times the points. Wildcard. Normally you're able to do 3 free substitutions. You can do another 3, but it's negative 10 points per each for a total of 6 substitutions per race week. A wildcard, which you're able to use twice, once before the summer break and once after the summer break, you're able to get 12 free substitutions. And I'm going to tell you right now, you'll want to use your wildcard after race number 1 because everybody's going to be trying to trade out their team, and that's when you're going to get the biggest bump in your team value. Point scoring is now where there are new changes. Sharing with you my spreadsheet so you can see the differences in the rules. First is there are some driver specific bonuses that are no longer going to be driver only. They're going to now apply to the team as well. Everything that I've highlighted in yellow are those things. If a driver does not qualify or gets disqualified, boom, the team will now get a hit. If a driver gets a fastest lap, boom, the team is now going to get bonus points. Next thing that is a big change is race classification. If you do not get classified, it used to be negative 15 points. That will now be negative 10. Another major change is there used to be a difference between if you were starting outside the top 10 or within the top 10 and then losing positions. Now it'll be consistent. You get 2 points if you gain a position. You lose 2 points if you gain a position. Doesn't matter where you are. You max out at 10. So if you lose at least 5, negative 10. If you gain at least 5 positions, plus 10. And then the big one, what happened in previous seasons is that you had a driver who would get points for qualifying and then get separate points for the race. And how the points for the race and gaining or losing positions was not based off of how you finished qualifying, but your starting grid position. Case and point. Istanbul, Hamilton gets pole position. Boom. If you remember, Hamilton had to take an engine penalty. You'll see that Hamilton in round 16 was P1, but he started the grid P11. He finished the race in P5. Back to the results tab. In the previous season, because he took an engine penalty, he got maximum points for qualifying and then was able to start P11 in any positions he gained. He got points, bonus points, bonus points, bonus points. Starting this season, okay? Your starting grid is no longer a thing. You are now basing positions gained and lost off of their qualifying position. So if Hamilton qualified first, he'd get max points for P1, but then he starts the race in P11, which means that there is a 10 grid drop because of his engine penalty, which means that he starts the race in the hole negative 10 points. So instead of Hamilton getting 36 points, he would get 26. So the main takeaway about this rule adjustment, when a driver in the past was going to have an engine penalty or any sort of grid drop, you actually wanted them on your team because that was pretty much free points for gaining positions, especially if they were one of the top teams. Now, however, you don't want to do that. You probably want to drop that guy for the race because you don't know. Maybe the guy gets in a wreck. Maybe the guy can't pass people as well, and that makes him a liability. And so keep that in the back of your mind. Big change for this season. And now for part 3, new prices. Let's kick it over the spreadsheet. I've got some juicy details to share with you comparing last season to this season, and what should we take away from preseason testing. We have 3 columns of information. Let's start off with the start of 2021. Those were the prices ranked from most expensive to least expensive. Hamilton being at the top. Anybody with this gold yellow meant that they were very close in price range to each other, within $500,000. I put a little yellow line there so you could see that there was 2 close to each other here and 2 close there. Then at the end of 2021, you could see how their prices changed. Hamilton, he went down $500,000 over the course of the season. Verstappen went up nearly $1 million over the course of the season. You can see all this in the link in the description below under 21 verse 22 tab. The amazing thing to keep in mind is that Fantasy Formula 1 likes to keep everything back to a consistent number. They started last season with 279.7 million for all the drivers combined and 167.9 million for the constructors combined. Interesting, because look at that. Starting this season, they're right back up to 279. They're a little bit less, but pretty much they readjusted. They went down in price as a whole for all the drivers, almost 3 million. Well, they bounced back 2.5 million. Same thing with the constructors. They went from 167 again. And that is because they're trying to get back to the starting prices to balance everything out. But now let's look at some of the patterns. If you have the total points as listed in the second column at the end of 2021, and you compare their average points per race, now recognize 2 things. The first is I did not refund points because of Spa like PlayOn did, and also I did not have in the coding of my spreadsheet how to deal with Mazepin getting COVID for the last race of the season. So he did take a huge hit because he didn't show up for the race. So that did knock down some of his numbers and his race average. Averaging 0 points per race each season, total 10 points the whole season. Oof. Okay, this is how we calculate points per million. This is what you want to remember for your team. Points per million is pretty much taking the average points per race divided by how much they cost. The ones in yellow are the 4 best. You had Norris with a 1.7 points per million spent on him, followed by Verstappen, followed by Sainz, followed by Hamilton. If I take the same points at the end of the season, you apply it to how they were at the beginning of the season and calculate the points per million, it's fascinating how close these all balance out. Hamilton 1.1 to 1.2, Verstappen 1.6 to 1.5, Sainz 1.4, 1.3, Norris 1.8, 1.7. They're all similar even though people were able to trade. Now, I will be true to you and show that you can extend these decimals. These are rounding in this spreadsheet, but you can see that their prices hovered right about the same. Constructors, Red Bull was clearly the pick with over 2 points per million, followed right closely behind by McLaren and Ferrari. And as you can see, those prices were pretty much the same if you were to retroactively go back and apply the race average to how much they cost at the beginning of the season. So I find this all fascinating that prices went up and down, but it seemed like value drivers stayed the same. But what does that now mean for this season? We can see that Verstappen, who went up nearly $1 million over the course of the season, has now shot up 4.8 million. Whew, what is his new points per million value if it's projection based off of last year's points? Well, instead of costing nearly 1.5 points per million, he's now down to 1.2, which is close neck and neck with Hamilton. So now you got to make a decision. Do you want to anchor Hamilton or Verstappen depending on the points per million? Then you look at the outstanding performance of Norris, and boom, they've raised him up by 2 million, and he is now at a 1.4. Really good value if you are taking last year's points. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. You can have a difference based off of the new regulations. Now that we've looked at the value and how they change, and what you want to keep track of is how people's points per million are going to be over the course of the season, let's now bring up preseason testing. We see here that those guys that were highlighted in yellow, how they were performing. I took the average position compared to everyone else's times over the course of the entire 3 days. We have Verstappen's averaging position was second, Sainz is really up there, Norris is midway, and Hamilton looks bleh. 11th at the bottom. Now everyone's like, sandbagging. Okay, well that's true. Why? Because we can now look this up to last year, where the regulations were different, of course, but they were very similar between the 2 years of 2020 and 2021. Fascinating that Hamilton was averaging 10th and this year averaging 11th, but he's 4 seconds slower. Okay, let's look at his teammate Bottas, also averaging 11th, and the teammate Russell is only 2 seconds slower this time around. So it seems like Mercedes might be sandbagging like we thought, or maybe they'd be in trouble. Well, let's look. Last season, Mercedes came out the gate swinging, but during preseason testing, they were at the bottom of the pack, whereas here, they are also lower to mid-tier. Okay, what about Red Bull? Red Bull last season, best of the constructors, and they look second best here. This is why preseason testing you have to take with a grain of salt. I do find it fascinating though when you have guys who end up being the same. Let's look at Ocon. He had the same position during preseason testing as during his value at the start of 2021 and at the end of 2021. So you can look at this spreadsheet, you can see, okay, where are you seeing little patterns? Are there any clues anywhere? The main thing is this. Focus in on me. I drop 3 statistical secrets every Friday before the race. Because of time constraints, I do it between free practice 2 and free practice session 3. Don't make any major moves until you have seen free practice session 3. That is where people start doing their quali runs, and then you get to get the best sense of how they're going to perform that race. Preseason testing, that was fun, but from a fantasy point of view, it does not change the values of any of the drivers. Only after the race has concluded will the day trading begin, and everyone will start using their wild cards to try to figure out who they want on their team and who is the best value points per million. And don't forget, we've got the league codes coming. Here we go. Code is very small up in the top right hand corner. I will put the link in the description below. You can't always find it on Twitter when I post the new league code, but here is our season-long Pitwall League. You can join up to 3 teams. You can learn from other people, see how their lineups are. This is our great training ground to see how you can improve over the course of the season. So don't be afraid to put your team in this league. Now for the Orc Elite. 1 race challenge, 1 team entry. I thought for sure that PlayOn was going to allow us to do 1 race at a time per league, but apparently they have gone back on that. But it's going to be special. You join, the link will be in the description below. Like I said, follow on Twitter to get those codes as well. You submit 1 team. Top 3 teams get championship points that will be updated on the spreadsheet. If I get 10 people minimum to join the league, I get to make a custom banner and a custom avatar, and I love making those. And so definitely give it a go, join in, and that will be our 2 main leagues, season long and the 1 race challenge. And there you have it. Thank you so much for spending this time. All those that have been joining this community, this is going to be a great 2022 season with all of you on board. And until next time, I'll see you on the pit wall.